Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm going to be talking about how to stretch your food storage and how to make the most out of what you have. And today's focus is going to be on meats. And I'm planning on doing a couple more videos down the road. So one that can be more specific to vegans or even just people that need to be dairy free, and maybe one or two others. But today is going to be about meat. So let's start with the poultry section. So mostly we're talking chicken here, but this can also apply to turkey. Some of these recipes I prefer using chicken in over turkey, but others to me can easily go either way. So how this works is when I go to roast a chicken or a turkey, I very rarely ever buy parts. I get whole chickens, whole turkeys, and once in a rare occasion I might buy chicken breasts because I have a special recipe for barbecuing chicken breasts, which is best getting them raw and then marinating them. And I will link to that down below. I will also be linking to the video series I have on making the most of leftovers, because most of the recipes that I'm going to be listing off to you, not all yet, but most of them are already in that playlist. So if you're interested, you can look in there and you should be able to find quite a few of these. So what I do is I start off with the first night. It's going to be a roasted chicken, maybe with potatoes of some kind and a vegetable of some kind. And so then I can make a series of meals off of that one chicken, and I can actually stretch it out to last us about 2 weeks. I might not be able to make all of these off of one chicken, but I can usually get 3 to 4 other meals just from that one chicken besides that first night. So here's a list of various things. So a chicken pot pie or turkey, or a chicken and biscuit pot pie, a little bit different. So yes, I have a video on that. The main difference is instead of making a regular pie crust, you put your filling in the pan and then you make a biscuit topping. So that's a really good one that I need to do again. I haven't done that one in a while. A couple of our other favorites are orange chicken. So this is like a spicy orange chicken with the orange flavor. So it's got that sweetness to it, but it's also spicy. And then another one that's very similar to that in the way it's prepared is the almond chicken, which is the one we tend to make most. Love almond chicken. And the thing is though most of these dishes might traditionally be started off with raw chicken, it's actually much easier in a lot of ways using the already cooked chicken to do this. It shortens your cooking time as well, and it just makes it easier. I personally find I like it better. The only problem is when you're doing things like the orange chicken and the almond chicken is that when you're using the pre-cooked chicken, it can kind of fall apart on you a little bit, so you might end up with a lot of smaller pieces than you might want. But I actually prefer them in the smaller pieces than the real big ones. And then of course you have something like, and this can apply to any meat that you're going to do. I mean, even if you're one who eats pork, you can apply a lot of these to like a pork roast. So I'll just say that right off the bat, that you can use that, or even pork chops, leftover pork chops. So anyway, chicken fried rice, so you're just taking your rice, your vegetables, and your chicken and whatever spices you want to add to it. And it's an easy, simple meal that can really stretch that chicken out even further. Another one is creamy chicken enchiladas. I make enchiladas from time to time, but I have two different types that I make. I have one that's more of a less traditional one that has the more creamy type sauce, and I like using that one when I have leftover chicken. And then I have the other one that I usually use with beef that's going to be based off a more traditional tomato sauce. And obviously I'm going to probably mention that again when I get to the beef, elk, and venison section. There's also chow meins. You can make chow meins out of any of these meats. Chicken is going to be my favorite to use in the chow mein. And then there's chicken fettuccine. Again, when it comes to fettuccine, my two favorite types to use are either some kind of leftover seafood or chicken in that. But again, you can use anything you want. And then there's also the chicken or turkey a la king. Typically for that one, that's where I tend to use the turkey up quite a bit, is making the white sauce with the turkey in it. I rarely do that with chicken. Usually if I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to turn it into a fettuccine with the chicken. By the way, I know there's going to be several other recipes. I tried to look through all my stuff, but I know there's stuff I'm forgetting. This is just to give you some ideas. And then of course, once you've got all that meat off the bone and you're done doing that, then you can take the bones, cook them up. I don't have a video just on this, but Mary over at Mary's Nest has quite a few videos on making bone broth. I simply just take the rest of that carcass and cook it for 2 days. I do not add any kind of acid to mine. I find that you can, as long as you cook it for a couple days, you can get an excellent bone broth without having to add vinegar. And then that usually, what I do with that is it immediately gets turned into making a soup that will last us for days. Now let's move on to some red meat. So we're talking beef, elk, and venison. Now you can take your steaks, let's say you already have some cut up into steaks, and you cook up a bunch of steaks one night. Well, then this is something I also haven't done in a while, but this is one thing I used to do quite a bit, is I cook up a whole bunch of steak, a lot more than I knew that we could eat in, for one meal. Then take the leftovers and cut those up and then make steak fajitas out of that. So all you got to do is the meat's already cooked. You just add your spices, your chili powder, your cumin, add some fresh onions and garlic and some bell peppers, and then just cook that up, and now you've got your beef fajitas. Of course, you can do the same thing with chicken. You can make chicken fajitas as well, but usually when it comes to Mexican food, I like beef best. And then the rest of this will be based on cooking up a roast. Just like with the chicken, first night I'll cook up a big roast with potatoes and some kind of vegetable. And then the following nights, I will make different types of meals out of that. And that could be something like, that could be pot pie, that could be the beef enchiladas I mentioned earlier, that can be beef and bean burritos. A lot of times when I do that, I'm also using leftover beans that I'd cooked another night for, like beans and cornbread. Some other things are cold cannon. Cold cannon is typically not made with meat, but if I have leftover beef, I love adding it to the cold cannon. So the cold cannon, again, I have a recipe on this, is the mashed potatoes, cabbage, and onions, and then your salt and pepper are the main ingredients, and then whatever you want to add to it after that. Then of course you have your stroganoff, your barbecue beef. So this would be where I take my barbecue sauce recipe that I do have out as well. So since that's not in that playlist, I'll link that separately down below. And then I'll take that and then and then just add some beef to it. Again, you can add your chicken or other types of meat if you prefer. And then that would be something that you can serve either over bread or toast or noodles, or our favorite way to do it is to serve that over rice. And then there's also Mongolian beef. That's another good option. And again, I know I'm forgetting a bunch of other things that I can do with this, but here's something else. Now I have specific things that I make out of ground beef that I am going to cover later as kind of a bonus for this video. But a lot of this stuff with your roasts, if you don't have ground beef or if you're just wanting to use it up in a different way, you can replace your ground beef with your roast, your beef, elk, or venison roast, by simply just chopping it up in smaller pieces. And that can make a good option to add to your tacos, your lasagna, your spaghetti sauce. All right, so now let's move on to, let's talk about the salmon and steelhead. Now this isn't so much about whitefish, though I'm sure you could probably use this in the same way. Usually when we're cooking up whitefish, it's in smaller amounts anyway. But when I cook up a salmon or steelhead, I like to cook up enough that I can have leftovers to do a couple of other things with it. One of those is going to be making that salmon dip that I talked about for Thanksgiving. Now the recipe I have just says seafood dip because in that recipe I was making a clam dip for my son, but I really like using salmon in that. But you can use any type of seafood in that you want. You can also make a really great sandwich spread like you would with tuna. Same idea, just use your leftover salmon or steelhead. And then these things also work really good in your fried rice as well. So that's another thing I really like to do with the leftover fish, is use in a fried rice. Now some people could also use that in tacos if they prefer. There's such thing as fish tacos. I would think of more of a white fish for doing that with. And then another one, which I haven't actually made in a long time, there are two types of soup. You got your chowder. So remember, chowder does not have to be made with shrimp or clams. You can make it with any kind of seafood that you want. I mean, there's even a corn chowder that doesn't have any kind of meat in it, which would be good for people who are vegetarians, which I know you could actually make a vegan version of that, but I'll try to cover that in that other video. And then there's a seafood bisque. This is one I haven't made in a long time because it's really not one of Patrick's favorites, but I love seafood bisque. A bisque is more of a creamy soup where things are blended. All right, so that's that. And again, I know there's much more. I'm just telling you what I would typically do with these leftovers. Okay, so let's just talk about ground beef. Now, this isn't necessarily talking about leftover ground beef, but I wanted to bring this up because of the many uses of ground beef. Now, that can be in reference to your canned ground beef, or the ground beef that you have frozen up. Maybe you pulled out a bunch and browned up a whole bunch at once to save you some steps throughout the week. But here are some of the many things you can do with ground beef, elk, or venison. I keep saying beef, but we have all three. If it's canned, you're going to be a little more limited to how many ways you can use it. So if your ground beef has already been canned, it's already cooked like this. So you can't use it to make hamburger patties or meatballs or meatloaf. However, it can be used for everything else, such as your sauces for your lasagna or your spaghetti, your filling for your ravioli, or even to add some Italian spices to it to add on top of a pizza. I've done that many times. Can also be used in fillings for egg rolls. Now, I don't have an egg roll filling recipe yet, but I do have an egg roll wrap recipe. And basically, it's a matter of being creative. But hopefully one of these days, I'll get around to sharing my egg or spring roll recipe with you, which is going to be just whatever I make up that day because it's not always the same. And then, of course, you have your moussaka, you have your shepherd's pie, your tamale pie, which is one of our favorites. There's that one real popular dish that I still haven't come up with a good name for, but it's similar to a rice-a-roni, but you're making it yourself out of your own broken spaghetti noodles or small little pasta, rice, and beef, and then whatever spices and herbs and vegetables you want to add to it. And of course, you have your tacos. This can also be used in your burritos and other types of things like that, though I do like using the roast beef better in burritos. And then you also have your cabbage rolls, which is more the Americanized version of the Greek dolma. And as far as your frozen meat, again, we're talking, you make your own hamburger patties, your own meatballs, your own meatloaf, and even your own breakfast sausage, which I do have a couple videos out. One is using elk. Because the venison and elk is a lot leaner than your beef, there is an extra step, so that's why I have two different videos on the breakfast sausages. So I'll link to that down below. And then I also wanted to bring up, before I close this video out, is that a lot of these recipes I mentioned can also work very well for any of your other canned meats. So right here I have some salmon that I canned up from one of Patrick's fishing trips. And so that can work really well in the fried rice, the dip, the soup, the chowder, and the sandwich spread. And same thing with the canned beef. So this is canned in chunks. This can be used in any of those. And one of the things that I didn't bring up in the beef section that I'm going to be more likely to use the canned beef is my beef veggie bake. So basically I just throw the beef, a jar of my frozen zucchini or fresh zucchini if it's growing at the time, some onions, garlic, carrots, whatever other vegetables I want to throw in there. Throw that all into a pan, add whatever spices I want, and then just bake it. That's just a real simple, easy throw together meal that's pretty tasty. And you're getting potatoes. Of course, I throw potatoes in there. By the way, both this beef and this ground beef were canned back in 2015, and they're still good. For those seeing anything, the white stuff on the top, and you've never seen home canned beef before, all that is fat. Okay, it's not mold, it's nothing nasty in there, it's just the fat from the meats that floated to the top and solidified there. And then, by the way, some of you are probably wondering why there's a band on this one and not on these. And why would I put bands back on home canned foods? You're not supposed to do that. Ah, bad. I do have a video on why I do put the bands back on. I don't leave them on. Why I put them back on some of my jars, and I will link to that video down below if you're curious. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and it will give you some ideas of how to make the most of those leftover meats to really stretch your meals out, especially now as I think we're going to start seeing some food prices really going up. I mean, they've always been going up, but I think we're going to start seeing them going up in bigger jumps than usual. So getting your food storage put into place now as soon as you can before the prices hike up to an unbelievable level, and then learning how to really stretch the food to make the most out of it, that will help you save even more money by doing that. So I really hope this is helpful to you, and also share with us down below some of your favorite ways to use up leftover meats, whatever types they are, and be watching for more videos like this to come out in the future. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.